Hello and welcome to another episode here at the Total Space Network. I'm RichLB, and joining me today we have Mikko and Chief Executive Officer and founder of Scout Space, Eric Ingram. Eric, hi, how are you today?
I'm great, thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming here today and giving us some of your time. We've got some questions here for you that we're really eager to get into. And I suppose there's no real better place to start, really, than the top. So why was Scout Space founded, and what inspired you, Eric?
So it's really a myriad of things that came together, but the thing that is the thread between all of it is really our desire as a company and as a group to create and ensure a safer space environment to operate in. So I'm a big space nerd, and growing up watching all of the sci-fi movies and shows I want to see all of that stuff in space happen. And the best way to do that, and my little contribution to make that happen, and my team's, is to ensure there's a safe environment, a well-managed environment for all of those cool things to happen. So, my experience in the industry, previously working at the Federal Aviation Administration Office of Commercial Space Transportation and doing some other work in industry, I saw gaps in our capabilities as an industry and as a species, I guess. And my CTO, Sergio, he experienced losing one of his own satellites in 2017 to unknown causes. So he had his own experiences that frustrated him. And his thesis was if he was just able to see a spacecraft, he would know what was wrong with it, and he would know how to fix it. And those things kind of all combined to when I founded the company in early 2019 as a means of developing vision systems and capabilities and the software to drive it to provide more transparency to space and to provide another layer of safety and knowledge about what's going on in the space ecosystem.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. I think many of the satellite operators really want to know what happens to their satellite. But yeah, what makes Scout Space unique?
So we've been really fortunate in the products we've crafted that they are very flexible in their capabilities. So by accident, we kind of created a Swiss Army knife of a system that provides these vision capabilities. So, our software can go into payloads, either our own or others on spacecraft, and into our own satellites, to allow this proliferation of vision capabilities to exist. So our Scout Vision system is a vision payload that goes on board customer spacecraft that allows them to be aware of their surroundings and do things that involve relative navigation. So either proximity operations, docking maneuvers, or things like collision avoidance. And by leveraging those systems in other spacecraft or leveraging a Scout Vision system into our own satellite, which is a 12U called OverSat, so a little bit bigger than a shoebox, then we can use that for third-person observation of in-space events, so complex operations and docking maneuvers or security camera operations, or as we really proliferate and build out our network, a fleet of OverSats in orbit providing space domain awareness and space traffic monitoring services and capabilities.
That is really awesome. Yeah, I'm already imagining the use cases right now. As you were reeling that off, I'm like, oh yeah, definitely. So for instance, at the moment we have the ground-based radio telescopes, which are trying to track as much as they can in orbit, but obviously you're then taking that step out and you're already having these things that can do that on orbit, so you can track from on orbit. So having multiple sensors out there to be able to determine these collision events, if they when they will occur, because there's a lot out there. There's a lot out there for sure. It's coming together real nice in that package that you've got going on right there. So, speaking of Scout Space, what does the future roadmap look like for you guys right now?
I mean, looking out into the future, let's say a few years, it's really about the proliferation of our capabilities. When you mentioned before about, having multiple sensors out there, being able to see everything, that's really what we're driving towards. A fleet of our oversats or, eventually our larger Eagle sats in, geo, cislunar, everywhere. We want to be able to see anything in space from space in as near real time as possible. And that is a paradigm that just doesn't exist right now. The ground-based observers that you mentioned, they provide a wonderful capability right now. And, they're providing immensely more knowledge than we had prior to that. But, they're limited. They're limited now. And as you increase the number of satellites and other objects up there, and as you increase the number of maneuverable satellites, and as you increase the diversity of the different orbits everything's going to be in, their job is going to get a lot tougher. And so we're really looking to try to complete that data set and provide that next generation of knowledge that really drives that expansion in a safe manner.
Yeah, that sounds like a good and much more safer future, especially with all the satellite constellations. I think Elon Musk did just yesterday tweet that soon there will be around 4,000 satellites, of which I think 2/3 are the Starlink satellites. So that's quite a bit. But looking at your journey so far, what have been some challenges or limitations you have had to overcome?
I mean, aside from the typical challenges that every startup faces, can't grow fast enough, right? It's really kind of what I mentioned before about this being a new paradigm and the capabilities we're offering being, a new product in a growing and developing industry. And so there's a lot of education and awareness we have to bring to the industry that, that space is crowded now. Space is getting crowded now. There are already issues now. And the needs for what we're developing are needed right now. I think there's uniform agreement that in an abstract future, defined whenever, this is all going to be vital and absolutely necessary. And I don't think anybody agrees to you. But then when you ask them, like, when is it needed? Then you get a bunch of different answers. But the real answer is as soon as possible. We're very reactionary as a species, and with what we're developing, and there's some other great companies developing other awesome tools, this is where we have a chance to really be proactive, and we really can establish that foothold and transparency and vision capabilities and data ahead of time, before some terrible accident happens, before it's too crowded to do everything and we're living in the future that WALL-E exists in, the movie, for reference. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that's the biggest uphill battle that's unique to us. It's really about informing the market that the need is now and the products are pretty much here and almost ready to go.
That is great. So, speaking of your products there and your hardware, you actually did, I say recently, it was a little while ago now, sent hardware to orbit on the Transporter 2 by SpaceX. So, how long a project was that particular piece of hardware from design to launch?
So we're a very scrappy company, very limited resources, and, we moved mountains. We went from a computer design to hardware in space in less than 9 months with only 2 full-time people.
Wow. That's going some.
It's an amazing story. I advise no one else to do it. It is not worth the amazing story. But, it was incredible to see what we were able to do with so little at the time. And, it was it's amazing to have hardware in space as a barely 3-year-old company that is still in its early growth phase. To say that we've had hardware on orbit for 9 months, and we recently signed a contract with a customer to fly 2 more payloads with them late this year and early next year, and so it's been spectacular. Like I don't know, it's still crazy to me to think that we were able to accomplish it and we actually have stuff in orbit. And I went to the launch, so that's the kind of thing that has been awesome in this journey. Is just when you really have that drive and the capability to get this stuff done and actually just putting your head down and doing it, like what you're able to do is pretty spectacular.
Yeah, that's crazy fast, and I bet there was quite a few sleepless nights and a lot of work hours.
I don't even know what sleep means anymore, so that's fine.
Yeah, but since you have had it in orbit, what have you learned since you got it in orbit?
Gotcha. Well, I will say the whole process has been educational. So even aside from just having a payload in orbit, the efforts needed to prep flight hardware, the efforts needed to run a program to get something to space and stand up the requirements for that, and then after it's delivered, all of the operational side of it and moving that has been essential in guiding our development as a company. Right? Once you're able to do that stuff once, you learn what works and what doesn't work, and you're able to better do it the next time. And that has been really beneficial for us. Having the imagery or having the payload on orbit, I can verify now that the Earth is in fact round. I have the data, so that's exciting. And we've really been able to test out baseline capabilities of our payload. And we're working with a great customer and partner on that mission, who's Orbit Fab. And we've been able to better define mission requirements for them and, better design our own product to meet requirements of customers going forward. So it is still a great testbed mission that's really allowed us to develop a lot of our stuff in-house operationally and product-wise.
So you mentioned earlier how you had a launch late this year and early next year with a customer there. That actually ties into our next question. Do you have any further launches in the pipeline? I mean, do you have anything further out from that, or is there still things in the works that you can talk about?
Yeah, I mean, one thing we're working on right now internally is our first oversat mission. So that's the 12U CubeSat that is owned and operated by us that we can utilize for direct observations in orbit. We're working towards launching that mid next year is our current target date. And of course, dates in the space industry are what they are. So we'll see. But, that is another learning experience, right? It's one thing to get a payload ready to fly. It's another thing to get a whole spacecraft. And, we've got some great mission partners working with us on that. And we're excited to evolve to the next step of not just having payloads and just, software packages, but having our own satellite that is running all of it, right? We can test out multiple generations of our software and capabilities, evolve them rapidly on orbit on our own platform, and offer that next level of capability, offer, taskable observations in different positions. We'll have propulsive capabilities on board, so we'll be able to move it around. And so, again, it's just going to be, the next generation offering those services and capabilities to customers.
That's great. Are you able to elaborate on some customer missions? What are you going to do with those? Or is that some hush-hush?
No, I can be vague enough. So a lot of the initial traction we've had has been with the satellite servicing sector. Those are the companies that want to manipulate, maneuver, refuel, repair, whatever, to other satellites. And to do those things, you really need to see what you're doing. You never really want to grab something without being able to see what you're doing. That could be dangerous. And so a lot of who we're talking to right now are interested in those vision capabilities to de-risk their operations, right? Our Scout Vision system has our proprietary software on board that provides 6 degree of freedom pose estimation, so knowing exactly what direction something's pointing in. We can do range, depth. We can build 3-dimensional digital imagery of what we're looking at so that we can factor in a lot of stuff into those manipulations. We combine that in with our own guidance, navigation, and control algorithms so we can tell our customers how they should navigate to do that job better. Either provide that, mostly providing as an opinion right now, but eventually we'll build up to actually actuating customers' satellites ourselves, and so directing that motion at some point in the future. And so that's the general initial group of customers. As we look beyond that, with our own satellites, oversats, then we get into a broader customer base of general satellite operators or high-value asset operators. So we can do things like third-person observations of complex events. So, for instance, 30% of all spacecraft failures, or at least at some point, I need to check what year that report was written, but 30% of all spacecraft failures happen upon initial deployment and commissioning. That's when they're turning everything on. That's when they're extending their solar panels and their antennas and any sort of physical things they have to move. That's where a lot of stuff fails. So by being on site from a safe standoff distance and watching those processes, just those, we can greatly reduce the risk associated with that. So that's an example of a service we can offer. Additionally, if you have a high value satellite or station or whatever, we can also do things like security camera operations where we're just kind of keeping a lookout, seeing what's going on. And then, of course, eventually, as we build up the network of our oversats, that's when we can start providing orbit-wide observation. So, we want to work to build up a fleet of these so we can have continuous observation of objects in low Earth orbit. So at any point, we can be tracking an object in its orbit as it goes around the Earth. And that'll be useful to pretty much every user of the Space Commons.
I mean, off the record here, just off the record for the interview, could you imagine a 360-degree live stream of JWST unfolding?
If I could have gotten that contract, trust me.
Oh man, that would have been amazing, just watching it start to unfold.
Yeah, and that's essentially stuff we can do. I don't know if we would have been ready in time, but then again, JWST was never ready in time, so that's fine. Yeah. And so, maybe the next time.
You spoke earlier about your space domain awareness. Now, I understand some of your software might be proprietary knowledge and stuff like that, but could you tell me, without going too in-depth into your software, how your systems bring this level of space domain awareness to your products? Like, what kinds of aspects of space domain awareness are you capitalizing on with your system?
Yeah, I mean, initially we're working vision-based systems. So initially it's RGB sensors. We're working towards evolving to include multispectral and eventually hyperspectral sensors to increase that data set. But you can get a lot of information about something from looking at it. As I mentioned before, we can do pose estimation, so knowing exactly what direction something's pointing in 6 degrees of freedom. We can do things like, if we're close enough, we can do 3D point clouds, so we can essentially create a digital 3-dimensional image of that object in our own database, and we can track and record and get information on it. Once we add multi and hyperspectral, we can get additional information on things. But, in the broader sense, the most important thing is knowing where something is. For almost everything in space that is a complex mission architecture, knowing where stuff is vital. And so by having our assets in space, either on customer spacecraft as a payload, on our own spacecraft, or if there's a customer spacecraft that already has its own sensing capabilities and we just throw our software on board, we have those different sensors in the network, and we can start really building that catalog out and knowing where things are. Knowing better where things are that we're tracking today, and also discovering new objects we're not tracking today. The smaller ones or something we just don't know about. And so that's really where the benefit comes along. It's not necessarily, the benefit for the larger industry or whatever is not in the specific object definitions and all of the finer details. It's really in the position knowledge of the objects up there. And that's when you really start seeing the benefits of the capabilities.
And I'm just going to open that question up a little bit and speak about, we spoke about earlier about the ground-based observations of like near-Earth objects and stuff like that. When you have your fleets up there and you're able to track these things visually, would there be some kind of bilateral agreements in place with these ground-based stations where they could hand off saying, okay, we have something over here, we'd like you to take a closer look at it, and could you send us like the visual data, that sort of thing? Could there be agreements in place like this between?
Yeah, we would love for that. Like, we want to be as collaborative with as many different groups as possible. And to have a tip and queue framework with the ground-based observers like that would make both of our jobs a lot easier, right? Yeah. They could provide additional information to their customers on top of the information they're getting, and they can also provide us more specific places to look to gather that information. And so that's mutually beneficial and beneficial to the industry. So it's, whatever the three-way version of mutually beneficial is. And I think you will see an economy, an ecosystem like that evolve as we go forward. There's a lot of space to look at. And again, we are all more cooperators than we are competitors. And I think, that model will only serve to really benefit everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a couple more questions. One is, could you tell us how you came up with your framework for space traffic management?
Gotcha. That is really a lot of pivoting and, maneuvering in the market. It's a lot of talking to customers and figuring out what's needed, what's not needed. I have a background in engineering, although I'm a terrible engineer and I don't do engineering anymore. So, I go into a problem thinking of, solutions, right? Like, I'm going to solve this. But really, as the company has evolved and crafted our products, it's really based on customer need. It's going to talk to people like, okay, what is your actual problem? What are you actually not getting? What sort of information do you actually need? And then going back and saying, okay, well, here's what we have in our pipeline of development. Let's scrap this. Let's build that more. Let's add these capabilities. And that's where we've been able to really refine our roadmap and product development. We can very easily serve a variety of different customers, not just in space domain awareness, but as you mentioned, in space traffic management. That ecosystem will be growing rapidly in the next few years because I think eventually the U.S. government will give it a regulatory home and then get regulations around it. And so I hope you'll see a lot more requirements around proper rules of the road. And I think we're going to be well positioned to be the traffic cameras that make sure people are following those rules of the road. And our software and systems will be well positioned to aid that ecosystem.
And jumping off of that, how you've got this emerging ecosystem of space traffic management, our next question we have here is, how do you envision Scout Space's role in the emerging low Earth economy that is opening up. So you've already answered that slightly about how we're talking about the space traffic management aspect of it. But, I mean, if you really think about it, you've got an opportunity here for even, live space cams of rockets coming up, or, rockets going back down, or capsules going back down, and being able to provide footage from space of that for, so not only on a live stream can you see cameras from the rocket itself, but you can have a third party seeing the rocket go up, So things like this, do you envision Scout Space maybe having a sort of media role even like that in the future? Or
see, that's what I talk about, us having that Swiss Army knife capability. The more people we talk to, the more we're like, well, have you thought about doing this with it? I'm like, we can't do that. I really want Scout to be synonymous with space sight and, with knowledge of what's going on in space, and with, if it's live footage for media purposes, if it's, for inspections, if it's for, just general space traffic monitoring. Like, I want us to be the first thing that pops up in your head. Like, okay, we need eyes on this in space. And we're like, oh, Scout is the place to go. I think, and I hope that's where we'll be. That's what our role will be. It'll be providing that transparency. It'll be providing that vision service, whatever it is. We want to be the eyes of the next generation of space. And, that's kind of what I, want us to be. And again, to my whole ethos that I kind of talked about at the beginning, I'm really about just de-risking the space environment. I want to see all that cool stuff happen. And if we're the ones that get to, video and see that cool stuff happening, even better. Like, that's dual purpose for me. If I'm the one that, makes it safe for them to do it, and I get to be the one that's, holding the video camera, watching this stuff happen, like that would be a great place to be.
Front row seats to Leo, right?
Yeah. Front row seats to the future.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. One thing you could do, instead of the astronauts doing a fly around of the ISS, you could do it with your satellites, for example.
That is a mode of operation we've examined. Doing external inspections to reduce the need for EVAs, extravehicular activities, is definitely a way to de-risk things. And yeah, that's something we've looked at. And if any ISS people are interested in that, feel free to reach out to us.
Or Hubble.
Yeah.
Or Hubble, yeah. Anything, whatever. Let us know what you need looked at, and, we can sign a contract to make that happen.
Yeah. Well, actually, over a week ago, there was an article about Scout Space completing a bridge round. Would you tell us about that? And if someone wants to invest in your company, is that possible?
Yeah, I'll start backwards. If you are an accredited investor, we're happy to speak to you. And, we, as a CEO of a startup, I am always fundraising. So, reach out to us if you'd like to talk. Last year was very good to us. We founded in 2019, and, we had to survive through the COVID downturn and all of that. And, we did a lot of work. We signed the contract to go on our first mission in October of 2020. And so, that really started ramping us up. And then we were able to do Techstars last summer. And so all of that just really propelled a lot of growth for us. And towards the end of last year, we were able to raise a bridge round, or a pre-seed plus round, whatever you want to call it, a second raise, led by Decisive Point, with participation from Virginia Innovative Partnership Corporation. That's what they're called. They recently changed their name. And then Geospatial Alpha. They came in with some angel investors to give us some secure financial footing to enable us to grow faster. So that gives us, a decent runway to make sure we're not stressed about anything as we go into larger raises and as we really position ourselves for the future. And the timing was excellent, and we're really appreciative of their support, and that allows us to grow and develop and to prep to do all that exciting stuff I talked about earlier.
Well, definitely can't wait to see all this come to fruition, and I will be greatly anticipating my first from space, live stream of a rocket coming up from Earth.
Yeah, me too.
Wait. Yeah, definitely. Well, you get to see it before I will.
That's true. Yeah. I'll let you know.
Yeah.
That actually wraps up pretty much all the questions we have for you today, Eric. So I just wanted to say, just before we close out, where can people find you online?
Yeah, you can go to our website at scout.space, or because we were cheeky with our naming conventions for our social media, all of our social media is scout.space, but with dots spelled out. So scout, DOT, space on pretty much every social. I even think we have a TikTok account, but I don't think we've ever used it. But yeah, give us a follow, reach out to us. We're happy to always talk to people about what we're doing and how we can do things better.
Yeah, that's awesome. Just asking if you have anything else you want to say before we close.
I think I'm good. I appreciate you having me here. I'm glad you have interest in what we're doing, and hope you all have a great time. Everyone out there listening, have a great day, and look forward to seeing you in real life at some point.
Sounds great, and I'd be really down for that. Definitely.
Absolutely.
So, again, thank you for your time today, Eric, coming on the show with us. It's been great. I've been RichLB.
I've been Mikko, and yeah, thanks for visiting us, Eric.